There are multiple worlds. 5 to be exact. Though to be even more precise, 2 are realms, and the other 3 are technically worlds. There aren't an infinite number on some kind of continuum, because the various parameters only give rise to worlds in naturally stable equilibriums, and it only does so in these 5 configurations. These unique parameters give rise to unique biomes and unique development of sentient life. They are not remixes on our world or deviations on Earth's timeline. They're completely independent. I realize my version of the diagram here indicates pathways between worlds. It's not the case that the worlds occupy different points in space, rather they overlap, but the nature of each as condensing into equilibrium states with orthogonal attributes means they cannot exchange information. That is, to belong in one means to be completely divorced from the other. The pathways and gates refer to established mechanisms by which an entity in one world can be converted into an entity in another. I use converted deliberately, as it is a rather complicated process with a few edge cases. I am aware of 2 gates, which are naturally occurring channels that are poorly understood. Now, a note of caution. Be careful not to find yourself in a non-equilibrium state. In such a case, every single elementary particle in your body will take a different path through time and space in an attempt to find equilibrium. We call it being ripped apart by space-time currents. Now, if you're super lucky, you might find a tiny pocket realm in a unstable equilibrium that's transient. But these are more of a theoretical curiosity than a practical reality. Let's begin with the familiar, our world. If you've been paying attention, there is essentially no magic. The matter we are formed from and see has negligible coupling to supernatural forces. Instead, there is a very strong coupling to the fundamental forces. Magic power, which permeates everything in the other world, rapidly dissipates whenever it enters ours. So I'll elaborate further in another class, but when we consider powers in the most general sense as mechanisms for imposing our will upon the world by directly inducing physical phenomena, it becomes readily evident why no magic exists in our world. If magic powers the bridge between our minds and the natural forces that govern the world, and our world has no magic power, there will be no magic. I should note that I'm using the term magic and magic power very loosely here as a catch-all. It's technically not correct, but I decided in the order of these videos to introduce the worlds first, and as the topics are inextricably linked, some simplifications were unavoidable. Now, if you're watching this, I assume you have some understanding as to how our world works. Though I'm a little concerned some of you spend way too much time on the Copenhagen interpretation, which I'm really not a fan of. With that out of the way, let's get to the fun stuff. The world on the other side. The magic world. Getting isekai'd and going on a grand adventure with swords and magic. Fighting demons. Then learning a bunch of stuff you'd rather not know, getting betrayed, stabbed, sent bouncing through history like a ball in a pinball wizard's machine. Sorry about that. Like I said, there is magic in that world, but to call it a world of magic isn't quite correct. That world is one in which physical forces and magical forces both exist in a balance. Put another way, physical phenomena is coupled both to the physical forces, the fundamental forces we're used to, and to origin, that is, magic. I make this distinction because physical entities can exist stably in this world, unlike the third world, which is to magic as our world is to the physical forces. Something that's very fascinating, or at least I find very fascinating in retrospect, is the familiarity of the beings there. The existence of conscious beings is expected, but the presence of humans is unexpected. I hate to say it, but in many ways, this world resembles some cliches found in today's fictional landscape. A closer look reveals important differences, but that's a discussion for another time. Anyway, it's notably of interest. I said earlier that powers manifest as a coupling between the mind origin and the origin in the physical world. Origin being, magic power, loosely speaking. This world has an even coupling, it's evenly balanced, which allows us to exist there physically and to use these magical powers. In fact, we even get some benefits in terms of robustness of our physical bodies. Now, creatures there exist as a mixture of physical body and condensed magical bodies on a continuum from 100% physical, 0% magical, to 100% magical. A few key differences in their society come to mind. So, despite greater technological and social advancements than our world had in, for example, the European Dark Ages, they cling much more strongly to feudal-esque systems of governance. I expect that this is because there's a much greater gradation in individual strength. There's a sizable difference between a commoner and, for example, a king just in raw power. Second, the existence of magic to supplement and enhance strength has reduced the difference in physical abilities between sexes. The higher up you go, the more powers dominate, and the more natural physicality or muscularity becomes negligible, with some exceptions, mostly at the very top and in reference to specific techniques. There are still some familiar social structures, they're still mammals, but it's much less rigid than you would expect. Most countries have much less discrimination than some stories might lead you to believe. People with skills can carve out a place for themselves, and everyone generally respects those with whom they can benefit from or interact with beneficially. So I'm not sure the reason here. It's probably because of magic, but that's not a great explanation. But interspecies reproduction doesn't seem to have any limitations. Next, the existence of magic has neutered scientific discovery and the development of engineering. These domains of study are really nascent. While materials with useful properties have been discovered, there's little funding or interest in extensive development. I think this can in part be attributed to social and political hierarchies that are based on individual strength. And lastly, I think that this planet, or the planet you end up on in this world, to be specific, is larger than our Earth, but gravity felt the same. The third and final world on the list, the proper magic world. To be honest, I don't know much about it. I have never been there. There isn't stuff there like there is in our world. Magic itself clumps together to form entities like matter does in our world that are both alive and not alive. We, being physical creatures, can't exist there. I've been told that you can kind of sense and interact with everything instinctively, kind of like a bunch of blurred impressions that flow together. Apparently it's difficult to describe. Beings like us should give up on the idea of going there, though. Moving on to the two realms. Theists among you might call these heaven and hell, but giving you half credit for that is pretty generous. To call it the realm of the gods and the underworld would warrant more points. There are a great many mysteries about these places, so make of what I say what you will. Take it with a grain of salt. The realm of the gods, or my personally preferred name, the domain establishment realm, is a very alien environment and, as the name suggests, the place where gods can exist. The Abrahamic gods aren't real. They can't hurt you. But what am I referring to when I say a god? To understand that, let's start with what happens when you die. So a living creature's body is the only place in our world where supernatural power can kind of reside. Even in the other world, it's one of its best repositories. Over your life, your consciousness imprints itself upon this hidden repository. And occasionally, this behavior is sufficient to copy your being, your consciousness. Congratulations. You've outlasted death. But you can't really stick around, so you either get sucked into one of the realms, or various entities will take you to one. A quick side note, the formation of a spirit is generally considered random. I posit it as something to do with the strength of character or of your convictions in life. Now, a quick note on necromancy. Necromancers do their thing by using this spirit as a substitute for the brain when reanimating the body. So they take the spirit, they refuel it with magic power, and then they use that to extract the person that died. And then they link it up with the body and all sorts of other stuff. That's another topic. We're getting to the God stuff. Be patient. So in this gamble for our continued existence, let's say you end up in the realm of the gods. Maybe an angel brought you there before a god, in which case you were really unlucky. A god is an agglomeration of power such that the individual egos are wiped away to join a larger, usually unconscious, energy domain. Some of the larger ones have developed their own egos. A few even ended up with familiar identities from our different religions throughout history. But all of them are in constant competition to grow more powerful. So go there, and you'll end up erased and your spirit consumed. They'll even eat each other, if they can. Thankfully, they can only exist in that realm, where the property of positive resonant convergence enables domain establishment in the first place. They can't exist without it. So yeah, if you find yourself in a bright, white world, I guess make peace with non-existence. And remember, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're really lucky, a Reaper is going to take you to the Underworld, which is a really beautiful place. It's an immensely diverse realm, and it's also enormous. This place is the opposite of the domain establishment realm. Powers or origin is subject to resonant divergence, causing a depletion in supernatural phenomena via a rejection in the control mechanism and dispersion of origin itself. Because of this, your new body will naturally only have about, one lifetime before it's lights out. Also, there's only one source of power there, unlike this middle world I spoke of earlier, which has several different power systems. So a lot of people reject their second mortality, and so they pursue a method of ascension that involves absorbing the aura and powers in the world around them to first cleanse and purify their spiritual bodies, to strengthen it, and then to form within themselves energy cores and new bodies as they strive for higher powers and for higher levels of strength. If this sounds like a Chinese cultivation story, gold star, because it's remarkably similar. I personally really like Heavenly Silkworm Potatoes stories, so go read them, I guess. There isn't much to elaborate on here, but there is one place you should avoid at all costs there. Those things exist there. You'll know if you see it, but never go in. I'd really rather not talk about that place. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this class and found it interesting. I'll probably make more either way. I think next time is power systems.